Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Drewski with Cryptidwarfare and Conspiracies podcast. Guys, I hope you guys had a blessed week. Hope you guys have a good one. And guys, I'm going to let you know we have a heater today, guys. We have a good, awesome podcast for y'all. I've been listening, put it this way, I've been listening to this guy's show for years, Dogman Encounters Radio and Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio. So if you guys don't know what that is, if you guys do, you guys know exactly who I'm interviewing. So the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Vic Cundiff, everybody. So, yeah, I just wanted to say, hey, Vic, man, appreciate you coming on the show, dude. Stopping by, hanging out. So, just want to let you know that, man. Appreciate you.
Well, thanks for having me. With that build up, you're going to make me nervous. Better be careful there.
It's all good, man. I believe in you, brother. You got this. You got this.
Thanks for saying that, though. That's awfully nice of you.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Yeah, so so I kind of do this a little different. Before we get into this, where can people find you at? Because I usually ask the people who I interview before and after at the end of the podcast. So where can people find you at?
Well, the easiest way to find me is via the girl that brought me to the dance, Dogman Encounters. The website for Dogman Encounters is dogmanencounters.com. And if you go there, that's really the home base for the show, for what I do. A lot of people think that the show is Vic Cundiff, but the show is actually just a tool that I use to help eyewitnesses come to terms with their encounters. Now, a lot of the eyewitnesses that I speak with, they don't have any interest in coming on the show, and that's totally fine. There's never any pressure to do that. But for other people, they want to come on the show as a way to put their experiences out there in an unrestricted way where they know they're not going to be judged negatively and whatnot, because all they have known ever since they've tried to share their experiences with family members and friends is rebuttal. I mean, family members, friends have been throwing it back in their face. They're the punchline at family get-togethers. Well, now here's this option where they can come on this show that's heard in all sorts of countries all over the world. People who feel for these eyewitnesses. It's just a totally new thing for them, and it works wonders for them when it comes to them coming to terms with their encounters.
Yeah, I definitely hear that, man. And that is definitely one thing I did notice about your show and a couple other shows is that to me it's definitely therapy for these people. It's definitely therapy for the people who listen to it. Because when it comes to that, it's kind of like a taboo thing. Now, the whole Dogman thing and the whole Bigfoot thing is kind of becoming kind of like a pop culture thing, but like like before that, basically like a couple years down the road, like man, just like you said, like a lot of people were getting made fun of and, didn't really have like a safe place to go to just to talk about their experiences. So, yeah, man, I appreciate you for that, man. You're definitely like the tip of the spear when it comes to that. So,
well, thanks for saying that. Now, I just feel lucky to be in a position to be able to help these eyewitnesses, because imagine having the most traumatic experience of your life, but you've got nowhere to turn. And then they find out about me and they realize there's someone who's dedicated their life to helping eyewitnesses just like them. I just want to pinch myself. I feel so lucky to be in a position to help these people. I really do.
Yeah, 10-4 on that, man. It definitely is a blessing for sure. But yeah, brother, we'll just get into it. We'll talk about basically, I just want to know how you got into this, the whole podcasting, the Dogman, Bigfoot, and all that, and then we'll basically just go from there.
Well, back in 2007 and 2008, I was a co-host on a Sasquatch-specific podcast called Campfire Shadows, and back then, Jim Bear King and Tim Coonbo Baker were regulars. Well, they would go out and have outings where they would look for Sasquatch. They called them boogers. And after some time, I guess I'd been maybe a co-host on that show for close to a year, when they came back after an outing one weekend and they talked about somebody in their group had seen what they called a dog-faced booger. So I'm thinking, what, a dog-faced booger? And I knew what a booger was, a Sasquatch, but when they said dog-faced booger, I'm thinking, okay, that throws me for a loop. Well, after the show, I think it was after the show, I asked one of them what they were talking about.
Yeah.
And that's when they told me that basically they were talking about a dog man. So yeah, I just looked into the whole dog man phenomenon to try to find out all I could. And I thought, you know what? If you have an encounter with a Sasquatch that's traumatic, you can almost go to your local grocery store and find someone to get help from. But if you encounter one of these things, one of these dogmen, where do you go for help? And obviously, it's going to be a lot more traumatic in most cases when you have a dogman encounter than a Sasquatch encounter. So I thought, you know what, there's a real need here. But it wasn't until years later, 2014, in other words, that I put the pieces in place to start the website, dogmanencounters.com. And then it wasn't too long after that when I had people all over the world contacting me to tell me about their experiences. I was hoping to have quite a few people reach out to me, but I was blown away by the response, by how many people almost right off the bat were contacting me to let me know about their encounters with dogmen. So, yeah, that just hammered home the importance of what I was doing in my mind. And I mean, fast forward all these years later, like I said, I just feel blessed to be in this position. And you wouldn't believe how many dogman eyewitnesses I've spoken with over the years. Yeah, it's in the thousands upon thousands.
Yeah. I'm sure it has, man. Yeah, and that's actually one thing I did notice because I actually moved here to Tennessee in 2014, and then when I was actually searching through podcasts, I noticed like a year later I saw yours, and then you and I were talking like a little bit earlier. For anyone who starts a podcast and stuff, for anyone who's been in this long enough when it comes to the cryptid world, there's always resistance, there's always naysayers, there's always people who give you crap. So, you know, has that gone on at all with you?
You name a big name in the dogman community, Drew, and I had resistance. When I started this, I reached out to this person. I'm not going to name any names here, but yeah, when I started this, before I even aired the first episode, I contacted basically the most prominent person in the dogman community with hopes of having them be the main host of the show and me just being basically a color commentary. And they said no. They weren't mean about it, but they said no. Well, it's a free country, no problem. I was disappointed, but they weren't under any obligation to say yes and do this with me.
Mhm.
So I said, thank you for your time. And I just moved on with my plans to keep the show going and air the first episode soon. Well, I take that back. I think the first episode wasn't scheduled to air for like another 6 months after I reached out to that person. Well, about a month or so before the first episode was scheduled to air of the show, that person had another researcher, dogman researcher, contact me, and they had the gall to ask me, hey, so and so and I, naming that person, that prominent authority, that person and I are going to be starting a dogman podcast, and we want to know if you want to join us. And
Hmm.
I'm thinking, wow, you've got to be kidding me. That's pretty thick. Well, I said, thanks for the offer, but no, I mean, I've got all this money invested in getting the show off the ground, and I've got episode 1 scheduled to air roughly a month from now. Yeah, I'm not going to throw all that away and just glom onto your production. Thanks, but no thanks. Well, they never did even start their podcast, but after I started airing episodes of Dogman Encounters, I noticed that people who had reported encounters to this person, all of a sudden they would agree to do shows, and then shortly before it was time to record a show, they would either just totally ignore me or send messages and say all of a sudden, nope, we're not going to come on the show now.
Oh man.
So yeah, it's pretty frustrating. And then word got back to me that negative things were being said and lies were being made up about me. So I was pretty disappointed about that. But there were other people too in the dogman community that just gave me the cold shoulder. I reached out to them hoping that they'd be interested in coming on the show. And yeah, they gave me the cold shoulder. Some of the most prominent names in the dogman community. So I thought, okay, well, I was hoping for a little bit of help with this, but there's nothing wrong with just doing it by yourself, pulling yourself up by the bootstraps and just getting this thing off the ground by yourself. So that's how I did it. And fast forward to present day, I've got 561 episodes in the books. And tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern time, just a hair under 2 hours from now, I'm going to air a live stream episode, which is episode 562. So I'm really happy with how this turned out.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. Yeah. You can definitely pat yourself on the back for that one. I know exactly. I'm pretty sure I know exactly who you're talking about. So, yeah. So I know they have a. I think their following's kind of going down, but yeah, they always post their stuff on Facebook and drama and all that crap. But anyways, yeah. So, but yeah, yeah. To me, that was kind of like a kick in the face when it came to that, because you ask them and then they're like, "Nah, we're good," and then they go ahead and ask you on that. It's just not right, man. But as far as that, have any of those prime people that turned you down in the beginning, have they actually came around and they've actually been on your podcast or helped you out in any way?
No, they haven't. Yeah, if you're wondering who they might be, if they've never been on the show, then that's a possibility I'm talking about them. But yeah, I mean, you name the prominent figure and almost I can't really think of any prominent figure who's not on that list when it comes to Dogman, but that's okay. I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing it yourself, and there's no obligation for anyone to ever come on my show or anyone else's show. It's just how it is sometimes.
I got you, man. So other than that, as far as like the whole podcast aspect, right, with the interviews and stuff, what was I should say, what was the one that kind of broke you through that barrier?
Well, there is no such thing as breaking through a barrier. It's just been a steady climb, just episode by episode, and getting the word out about the show. When I started airing episodes, there really wasn't anything like Dogman Encounters around. Well, there wasn't. Flat out, there wasn't anything like Dogman Encounters around, period. There were no Dogman shows. You had podcasts that had an occasional Dogman eyewitness on, but to have a new eyewitness week in, week out, I mean, it was some time after I started airing episodes that it was a problem to find a new episode or a new eyewitness to bring on week in, week out for new episodes. Whenever you do this sort of thing, you're always going to be besieged by liars who want to lie their way onto the show. So that makes it difficult enough as it is. And yeah, I mean, if I know someone is lying about their encounter or encounters, then I'd rather have a week where I don't air an episode than to bring a charlatan on. But that's not to say I haven't had plenty of liars on the show, because there have been quite a few episodes where I've had to hold my nose because I was all but convinced that the eyewitness, the guest, wasn't telling the truth, but I didn't know that. So yeah, I still let them on because I made a promise to myself, Drew, when I started doing this, that I would much rather play the fool and have someone on the show who lied their way on the show than to have someone who was a bona fide eyewitness, but due to how they said this or did this or that, I mistakenly took them to be lying about their encounter. I mean, it's so easy to think, and it's a conceit to think that you cannot be fooled by someone who's lying. There are so many comments I've gotten over the years about people saying that, can't you see so-and-so is a liar? I'm basically a two-legged lie detector. I can't be fooled. Well, there's no one out there who can't be fooled by someone who's lying to them. There are people out there who are so skillful at lying, they can lie through their teeth to you and you wouldn't know it. It's just a conceit to think that you can't be fooled by this person or that person. So that's basically why I made up the policy that I'd much rather play the fool and bring someone on the show who did lie the way onto the show that I don't know definitively is lying about their experience than to turn away at the door someone who actually did, like I said, have an encounter, but due to how they delivered their experience to me, for some reason I mistook them as being a liar. And everyone knows, everyone has experienced it where you've told someone about one of your own experiences and the person you were talking to, they gave you the old, you're right, because of how you delivered it. You said this, you did this, maybe you're moving your hands in a certain way. So they're thinking, okay, yeah, that means that this person's lying. It happens to all of us. No one's infallible. So that's basically right there why I adopted that policy.
Yeah, that's actually really good, man. Because same here. When it comes to podcasting, like you said, you got so many people that tell you experiences and what they have, and not only that, everyone's experiences is not the same. Everybody's experience is different. So it's kind of, if you get that much volume of people emailing you, calling you, talking to you, I mean, it's just, if you're going to be, hovering over them the whole time with the freaking microphone, with the glass, and, trying to pick and choose, like, to me, it's just a lot of work, man. But yeah, but I definitely do hear you on that. There's been a couple people I've actually talked to, and I haven't interviewed them, but yeah, some of their stuff seems really outlandish. But other than that, I'd rather have them, come on, talk about it. It's just for them, just to get off their chest. But other than that, yeah, I do. I definitely do hear you on that, and yeah, like you said, you actually rather play the fool, and just listen to their story instead of just keep dropping that hammer, because you never know. Like you said, some people could actually have that, like, legit, like, dogman encounter, and it could be crazy and wild. And as a person who does the investigations and stuff, I've had told a couple people if they wanted to hear it, and I have gotten those smirks, and it doesn't feel good, man. It really doesn't. When you put your heart and soul into this, and if people don't believe you, I guess, just kind of like, yeah, it is what it is. But it does suck though. But yeah, but
It
yeah,
does.
yeah. But other than that, so okay, so you've been doing this for a while. So did you start the Dogman Encounters first, or did you start the Bigfoot Eyewitness first, or was that flip flopped?
Yeah, I started Dogman Encounters. I started airing episodes for DER in 2014, and then I
Yeah,
started airing episodes of Bigfoot Eyewitness in 2015. So, yeah, just about a year later, on August 22nd of 2014, that's when I aired the first episode of DER, and I think it was sometime in the summer of 2015 that the first episode of BER, Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio,
yeah,
aired.
I gotcha. Have you ever been out on any investigations or anything like that?
Huh. No, I don't research them. I just do the best I can to help dogman eyewitnesses come to terms with their experiences. Some people wonder if I help Sasquatch eyewitnesses too, and I don't. I just focus on the dogman side. There's so many people out there who can help eyewitnesses who had traumatic Sasquatch experiences out that there's no need for me to try to dedicate time to that. I have my hands full just trying to keep up with the dogman side, helping eyewitnesses come to terms with their dogman encounters. And that's what I got into this for anyway. I'm a dogman guy. I'm not a connoisseur. Don't get that wrong. Some people think that I find novelty in dogman encounters. I want to watch every last dogman show, or I want you to send me your dogman pictures. Almost all of them are really hard to tell what you're looking at, but yeah, there's
Yeah,
no
I heard that.
novelty there. I mean, I don't get into dogmen. It's just what I do. So, yeah, I mean, I just try to help dogmen eyewitnesses come to terms with their experiences the best I can. And I happen to have that podcast, Dogman Encounters Radio, like I said, that serves as kind of a tool to help eyewitnesses come to terms with their experiences. So, yeah, I'm not a researcher. I do try to head out into the woods. I like to go on long walks in the woods to clear my head and everything when I can, but I'm not researching out there, even though the big woods here, I mean, it's like a Holiday Inn for Sasquatch and dogmen. I mean, the
Hmm.
woods here have everything that a whole community of dogmen and Sasquatch could want. A whole community of them could hide in these big woods and never be seen if they didn't want to. But I still go out alone, and that's another thing that blows people's minds. I head out alone and walk miles through the big woods here. I've literally walked hundreds of miles doing that without any weapon or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, I tell eyewitnesses, well, basically, I practice what I preach. I tell eyewitnesses that these guys, i.e., dogmen, they're not wired to kill you on sight as soon as the opportunity presents itself, because over the years I've been doing this, I've spoken with so many eyewitnesses who were caught dead to rights in places and situations where if the dogmen wanted to take them out because they were wired to kill people as soon as the opportunity presented itself, those people would have never spoken with me, but they were allowed to leave the situation, the encounters that they found themselves in, because the dogmen that they encountered didn't want to rip them apart or kill them. In other words, the dogmen they encountered were not wired to kill them as soon as the opportunity presented itself. That's another thing. There's so many people who are into the dogman phenomenon who they just are convinced that these guys are wired to kill us as soon as the opportunity presents itself, because they listen to all these crap podcasts that basically they're creepypasta. And there's nothing wrong with creepypasta at all, as long as you let it be known that, okay, this is creepypasta. It's not true. These aren't true stories. But there's so many crap podcasts out there that put out creepypasta that's presented as being factual stories. So then what you have is, and one of the biggest reasons why that burns me is eyewitnesses who have traumatic encounters with dogmen, they listen to this crap, they think that these are actually factual stories, and then I have to talk them off the ledge because they're already having so much trouble dealing with their encounters. When they listen to this crap, it just makes it that much more difficult for them to deal with their experiences. That is until I have a chance to speak with them and explain, look, this didn't happen, that didn't happen. That's just a made-up story to get views, to line someone's pocket with money, who values money much more so than the truth. So it gets really frustrating for me. It really does.
Yeah, that's a deep, man. For sure on that. Shizo, yeah, I can definitely see that. So basically out of all the years I've been doing this, have you ever worked with oh gosh, what is it? The North American Dogman Project or the International Dogman Project? You ever work with any of those guys?
No,
Okay.
no, I don't.
Yeah, I really don't know much about them, but I've just heard them, just like in the circles and stuff like that. Be traveling, so yeah, I was wondering if you did.
No, I'll just leave it at that.
That'll work. Enough said. Okay, so so one question I want to ask you, because basically you've been doing this for a while. Okay, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say speculation, but there's a lot of people stating that, okay, so Dogman's physical, spiritual, interdimensional. I want to know where you lay at.
Wow, that's a really tough question, because when you speak with thousands upon thousands of dogman eyewitnesses, the way I have over the years, it's natural that you're going to talk with eyewitnesses who report, credible eyewitnesses at that, who report seeing these guys do things that point strongly towards them being ethereal beings, not just flesh and blood creatures that are out there trying to scratch out a living in the woods. And then on the other hand, you talk with tons of credible eyewitnesses who report seeing these guys do these things that point soundly towards them being, having to be flesh and blood creatures that are trying to scratch out a living. So I really can't tell you definitively what they are. Maybe some are flesh and blood creatures and others are ethereal beings. I don't know, from the ether. It's really hard to say, but when you talk with so many credible eyewitnesses who report seeing them do things like eating fetid roadkill on the side of the road in the middle of the night and drinking nasty water out of a stagnant moss-covered pond, well, if you're dealing with a demonic being or a supernatural being, then why would it need to eat fetid roadkill? Why would it need to drink nasty, stagnant water out of a moss-covered pond? But then on the other hand, you've got so many credible eyewitnesses who report seeing offspring walking next to a bigger dog man up the side of a road, seeing a dog man they shot bleed and run off, leaving a blood trail, and all these other things that point towards them, okay, probably being flesh and blood. So, yeah, I can't answer that question for you. All I can do is just guess, basically.
Yeah, it's like that answer. What's your answer? Yes and yes.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah. Um, so when it comes to that dogman aspect and everything, out of all the miles you walk, because like you said, you go out in the woods and stuff, have you ever had any encounters? You ever had any experiences or anything like that when it comes to Bigfoot, Dogman, anything? When you're out there in the woods walking around, rucking.
I've been messed with. Yeah, I've been messed with, but when I've been messed with, it seems like it's been Sasquatch. I don't think I've had any experiences with dogmen. I really don't. I've heard things next to the direction I've been walking through the woods that might have been dogmen, but unless I actually saw what it is, in my opinion, that's just too big of a stretch to say that that's what it was. So I can't tell you what happened there, but the most recent experience where I was messed with, I was walking in the big woods, and all of a sudden this acorn, I heard the acorn hit the ground about maybe 30 feet, I guess, behind me, 30, maybe 40 feet behind me. And I heard a pit, like a pitter patter, a double hit, like it had been thrown. So I turned around and looked, and I saw it rolling from right to left, and it basically rolled right through the path I just walked in the woods. And when that happened, it wasn't windy, it was calm. So if that's the case, how could it have rolled from right to left the way it did? And I heard it hitting branches before it hit the ground, but it didn't register what was going on until I heard it hit the ground and turned around and saw an acorn rolling. And then when that happened, I looked up into the treetops. Well, I'm in a pine forest, and an acorn, you're not going to find an acorn in a pine forest. There weren't any. Was it a walnut or an acorn? It was either a walnut or an acorn, but there wasn't a walnut tree. There wasn't an acorn. There wasn't an oak tree anywhere around. Again, I was in a pine forest. So how do you explain that? I think it was a Sasquatch that had thrown it, and then I consequently heard the acorn, the walnut hitting the branches, and then it hit the ground and then rolled. After it hit the ground, that's when it rolled across the path of travel that I just walked down. But I guess it's possible it was maybe some person hiding in the woods. I don't know, but I mean, I had walked at that point a good distance. I'd walked over a mile into the woods at that point. So I'd probably walked over a mile and a half at that point right there into the big woods. So unless this person was just bored out of their mind and happened to be way out there where I was, which is pretty thin, then it's hard to explain unless it was a Sasquatch. But I didn't see a Sasquatch that day, full disclosure, so I can't say definitively that's what it was.
Yeah. So when that was happening, did you feel anything? Did you smell anything? Did you feel any dread or anything like that? Nothing.
Not
Just
at
like,
all. No,
okay.
no sense of dread. And I didn't hear the ambient noises stop either. So nothing out of the ordinary. What happened that day is just basically what I laid out there for you. I can tell you that years before that, I was out there with my brother, and he actually saw it first. But yeah, we came across a Sasquatch print. So there definitely Sasquatch in that woods. And with this woods, it'd be crazy to think that there aren't Sasquatch in it, because like I said, this would be the Holiday Inn for these guys and dogmen.
Yeah. They got a whole buffet out there, and of course it is. When you have like water, of course you got game out there, and if it's miles and miles and acres and acres and acres of just forest, like you're right, it's a Holiday Inn for these creatures for sure.
Yes, tons of water, big woods. I mean, game galore. So what more could they want?
Yeah, I heard that.
Tons of moving water. That's even better yet, because they prefer moving water over lakes and ponds.
Yeah, I got that, man. Out of all your emails, out of all your experiences, I know I might be touching on a sensitive subject here, but I know there's some people who don't want to come on the podcast, but they let you know in I guess just give me like the cliff notes if you want. What was I'll say like the funniest or the scariest encounter that someone has told you that they've had? That's something that pops in your mind.
Well, one that always pops into my mind when I hear that question, and it's not the most frightening encounter is definitely not the most frightening encounter that's been shared with me that hasn't made it on the show. But the way this lady delivered it, I mean, it was like a made for movie type presentation. Some people, they're storytellers. I mean, they can really paint that picture. Most people can't. But when a person who's a true storyteller that can lay it out there for you in a way that just paints the picture where it's like you're seeing things when they're explaining their experience. I mean, that's why this really stands out in my mind so much when it comes to when I'm asked that question. This lady was working as a security guard in Oregon at this sawmill that was maybe not way out, but it was in the woods. Well, the night her encounter happened, there was another man who normally would work with her overnight, work security, because it was a pretty big sawmill, she said. Well, he called off or told her that he was going to, yeah, I guess he told her that he was going to be late getting in. So since they both worked third shift while the sawmill was shut down, it's basically just going to be her overnight until that guy actually finally showed up. Well, she started work, I think around 11 p.m. or something like that, 10, 11 p.m. And I don't know how late it was. She shared this with me like 8 years ago. I can't remember how late in the night it was, but at some point in that night, she was leaning up against an outside wall of the sawmill with a door that she had come out to get outside, like right next to her. So she's just standing there, and there's just woods all around the sawmill, deep woods in Oregon. Well, she was standing there smoking a cigarette when all of a sudden something happened. I can't remember what it was that happened that made her realize that something was going on. She wasn't alone. Well, one thing led to another, and she wound up seeing a dog man. I guess it was approaching her, and when it did, naturally she was in shock. So she just bolted right in the door. She ran some distance across the sawmill floor. Then the sawmill, the way she explained it, there was this fairly extensive catwalk network up in the ceiling, the high ceiling of the place. So she goes running up the steps up into the catwalk network, and she figured by doing that, if she could get some distance between her and the floor, that she'd be safe. Well, I don't think she said she had even made it up. I don't even know if she said she had made it halfway up those steps, the metal steps up to the catwalk network, when she could feel them and hear them vibrate. Bang, 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 bang. So she turns and looks over her shoulder, and to her horror, she sees that dog man is coming up those steps right after her.
Oh my gosh.
That's what she told me she said. Well, probably worse than that, but yeah. Can you imagine? So she's all alone in this big sawmill. It's like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
And she's got this monstrous looking dog man that's behind her, chasing her up those steps into the catwalk network. And she's thinking to herself, okay, what I thought was sanctuary, it would be a nightmare to be up in the catwalk network with this thing up there with me. So she just kept on running up the steps as fast as she could. And she went some distance across the catwalk. And then there was another set of steps that led down to the shop floor. Yeah. So she went down to the shop floor. There was a door to this like mezzanine area where the offices were, and there was a break room. She goes dashing into that door and slammed it behind her. And then from what she explained, I think she said that the break room / lunchroom was a short distance down the hall. So after slamming the door, running a short distance up the hall, she went running into the lunchroom / break room, and then hid underneath these like long tables that they would use to eat on. Well, I can't remember how long she said she was hiding under one of the tables when she decided that, okay, well, I guess maybe I'll take a peek. I'll stick my head up and take a peek at one of the long windows that were on one of the walls of the break room that allowed people in the break room to see into the hallway. Yeah. Well, when she poked her head up over the table really slow, to her horror, she saw that dog man staring in right at her, and there was a slightly smaller dog man right next to it that was staring right at her as well. Oh, so not only did she have one dog man to deal with, she had two. So she told me there was another door in that lunchroom that went a different direction in the offices. So she just bolted for it, and she went through the door and juked and dodged and wound up going out the front door of the plant, of the sawmill, out into the parking lot. I guess it was some big gravel parking lot they had. Well, out at the edge of the parking lot, to her relief, she saw that guy had just pulled up. He was just pulling into his parking spot. So she just went running up to his window, absolutely hysterical, telling him what had happened. And I can't remember if she said that he had parked right next to where she parked her truck or not, but she just basically begged him to watch her as she got into her truck or her car and got the heck out of there. But yeah, like I said, that's not the most frightening. That's definitely not the most frightening encounter that's ever been shared with me that hasn't made it on the show. But that's definitely one of the most prominent ones that stands out in my mind when I'm asked that question. And I'm sure you can understand why now.
Oh, yeah. As soon as you said when she got on like that mezzanine deck, and as soon as you said when she was going up those stairs and she felt that vibration, I felt that, man. I literally felt that, like when you're explaining that. I just put myself in her shoes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's intense. And to get into the offices, they had to open up the door. She slammed the
Yes.
door thinking that, okay, there's separation. I'm shutting this door. But yeah, they had to open up the door to go in there with her. So that just made it even more freaky.
Shoot, man. Okay. So yeah. So basically, with these dogs, do you think they're pack oriented? Do you think they're rogue? Like, to me, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I hear people put out there all the time that they're convinced that dogmen, because they look like wolves in some cases, that they must hang out in numbers. Well, if you think about it, anything as big as a dogman's going to have a ridiculously high caloric requirement daily on a daily basis. If that's the
Facts.
case, it's not going to make sense for these guys to hang out in numbers, because if they did, they would deplete the resources in the area they were hanging out in overnight, literally. So would only make sense for them to hang out in numbers on a very rare occasion. And when I say that, people point to wolves, but that's just apples and oranges, because wolves, in order to dispatch the prey that they predate on, numbers are required. They can't dispatch an elk by themselves. They can't dispatch whitetails or mule deer because of the speed factor. You've got the speed factor that's a concern, that's a limiting factor, where they have to relay speedy animals like that to wear them down and then dispatch them. You've got the size and strength factor on the other hand. Other animals they take down, like elk, that are just too strong for one wolf to take down. They have to operate in numbers to take down bigger animals like elk and moose. So it makes sense. It's a requirement. They have to hang out in numbers. And also, if you look at wolves, their daily caloric requirements, nothing like what a dogman's daily caloric requirement would be. So it fits. It's not a problem. But for a predator the size of a dogman, an obligate carnivore, I mean, they have to operate on a huge home range the way any other large predator, like a mountain lion, a bear, any other large predator would have to do. So it just makes sense that it would be that way.
Yeah. You think they migrate?
Well, they might migrate, but I don't think they do that out of necessity. They might do it for some other reason, but yeah, I don't think it's out of necessity, because I've heard it put out there that they migrate out of areas when winter's coming on to avoid the nasty cold weather. Well, encounters have been reported from very credible people in very nasty wintry conditions. Episode 52, that's a perfect example. I can't remember where that encounter happened, if it was Wyoming or Montana, but the eyewitness on episode 52 was halfway up this mountain in a snowstorm, where he came around this bend and he saw a dogman that was dragging an elk. And that was actually an encounter where the dogman scratched him. But yeah, that was pretty intense. But yeah, these guys, they're operating in all sorts of weather conditions, snowstorms, blizzards, deluges of rain, extreme heat in the desert. There's really no condition you can think of where you can't have a dogman encounter.
Yeah, makes sense. I'm actually looking at that right now, episode 52, real quick, because I'm probably gonna listen to that at work. But uh, but yeah. So, geez, oh, yeah. But other than that, okay. So, because I know, I know you have all this things that you deal with when it comes to people and factors and stuff like that. So, what about like the whole like spiritual aspect about them being, coming in and out of portals, interdimensional Nephilim type of species? Like, I want to know, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Wow, all I can do is guess on that. I really don't know. You've got plenty of credible eyewitnesses who've reported seeing these guys using portals. So if they're using portals, does that mean that they're supernatural beings? I don't know. It's really
Yep.
hard to say. But yeah, all I can do is just guess how that works. And I just have no way of knowing for sure, definitively, what the answer is.
I got you. I got you. Sorry, I got these gnats flying everywhere with that my stinking garage door open. Um, yeah, bugs are coming out. Um, where do you see yourself in 5 years, like with this show?
Oh, I don't even worry about that.
You just take it just a day at a time.
I take it a day at a time. Yeah, I mean, if I had goals where I aspire to be at this point or whatever, I mean, I'm already where I want to be. I've been where I want to be. I don't worry about what's the number, subscriber counts or anything
Mhm.
like that. When was the last time you heard me on a show on an episode of Dogman Encounters ask you to like and subscribe? I
Never
don't do
heard.
that
Yeah.
because that's not what it's all about. What it's all about is helping the eyewitnesses. And yeah, I mean, Dogman Encounters has the poll where, I mean, I don't have to try and find Dogman eyewitnesses. They find me.
Mhm.
So I'm at a place where, I mean, I've got plenty of eyewitnesses to help that I'm basically at the point where I don't need to hunt for them. I am where I want to be. So I just focus on the people who are right in front of me who need help. And I'm just happy to be in a situation where that's the case.
Yeah, but I know with a big platform like you got and a couple other people, I know it gets to a point to where there's so much overhead, there's so much, I guess, factors, that you have to deal with. Have you actually had a I don't have to say any names, but have you ever have you ever had to hire somebody to help you out, like answer emails while you talk to people, stuff like that? People like, anything like that? Or do
It's
you just
not
do it all solo?
I do it all solo. I do it
Okay.
all by myself. That's why I laugh when people say around Christmas time, Merry Christmas to Vic Cundiff and the Dogman crew in the Dogman Encounters crew. Well, yeah, Vic Cundiff is the Dogman Encounters crew. I just handle everything from the ground up. I mean, I've
Yeah.
had employees before, not for this, but for other businesses that back in the day that I ran. I've had employees before, and it's always best if you can just to keep everything basically in a situation where you handle everything yourself.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it just gets ugly a lot quicker than it needs to. So that's why I've just have been happy. Even though it's a lot more work, that's why I've been happy just to handle everything myself.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that because when I first started out, I had another co-host with me, and then it just kind of flip-flopped, and you actually got to work with scheduling and all that, and it just becomes just a big mess. But now I'm actually in the same boat you are. I do everything myself, answer all emails myself, and you know what? I'm happy because I'm the only one because I have to answer to myself. If anything screws up, it's on me. So, but yeah, I hear that for sure. Um, as far as anybody wanting to start a podcast, tap into this world, what advice and suggestions can you give them?
Oh, that's a really good question there. You know what, Drew? I get frustrated when I hear this nice person or that nice person wants to start a podcast. So this night or that night, I've got time on my hands where I can actually tune into their podcast to see
Mhm.
how it's going. And I listen to them talking about this, talking about that. And the next thing you know, they're letting an F bomb fly or
Mm.
they're doing other things that they're talking about things, for example, that are going to drive away. certain demographics.
Mm.
And I just wonder, I shake my head and wonder, okay, I know this person really wants to get this podcast off the ground. They want to grow it and make it as big as they possibly can, but why have self-defeating behavior like that? When you let F-bombs fly, when you have profanity, period, in your podcast, there are quite a few people who are never going to ever listen to you again. After the first time they hear you use profanity, or especially an F-bomb, well, they're not going to listen to you again. Or it might be a podcast where it might appeal to a lot of kids. Well, if they hear you say an F-bomb or some other profanity, there are a lot of people out there who they're never going to let their kids listen to your podcast again. So why do self-defeating things like that? That's just something that really sticks in my craw. No, I don't speak like a saint all the time. I do let my share of harsh language fly when I'm not doing shows, whatever, but there's show behavior and then there's day-to-day life behavior. I try not to cuss any more than necessary, but at times it seems appropriate. But when you're doing a show, you have to be mindful of things like what I just highlighted. So yeah, the biggest advice is don't cut your own throat. Don't do things that are going to just automatically make certain demographics never want to even listen to your podcast again. Why would you do that? And also, number two, and this is probably almost as important as that advice, if not more important, when you're getting into podcasting, YouTube is easy. YouTube is the easiest way to get into podcasting. But my advice is don't make your podcast reliant upon YouTube, your success on YouTube. I'd highly recommend that you focus on growing your podcast in the podcast version, not on the YouTube side. Because yeah, YouTube, there are tons of people. It's no secret that when it comes to cryptid-based podcasts, that YouTube can get a wild hair and take down shows left and right without any reason of doing so. And then what do you have? If you don't have a presence in the podcast side, then your show is sunk. So yeah, that right there is a great reason why I highly recommend that people focus on growing the podcast side of their shows so that it's a bulletproof situation. You won't have to worry about the podcast side, Spreaker, or whatever podcast aggregate you use to put your podcast episodes out there in podcast format. You don't have to worry about them canceling your show or refusing to air your episodes on their platforms. It's bulletproof. So that's why I highly recommend that you focus on that side instead of putting too many eggs in one basket on the YouTube side.
I got you on that. That's definitely words of wisdom on that. Yeah, I definitely hear that for sure. Now, as far as your, gosh, because I've actually had to have this happen. As far as like your guest quality, we're actually going to go back to the first question. But now, someone who's starting the podcast, whoever you're getting on, do you give them the advice to vet these people before they get them on, or do you suggest, hey, just come on and just basically, just tell me your story to starting off the podcast?
Well, see, that's the thing. It's all too easy for people who aren't in a situation to even consider the possibility of vetting guests to think that you can vet every guest. Now, let me qualify that. There are Dogman eyewitnesses I can vet because they claim to have had a Dogman encounter within a certain range.
Mm-hmm.
If a Dogman is within a certain range of a person, then there are certain things that eyewitness will have to notice that I can ask them about to verify if they actually had that experience. Perfect example, episode 34 with Michael Lawrence. That was the episode, episodes 34 and 35. He came back for the second episode to share even more encounters that he had. But episode 34 is the episode, where Michael Lawrence came on and talked about how when he was a kid, he was a Boy Scout, and his Boy Scout troop went on that camp out in the Anza Borrego Desert in California. And in the middle of the night, he talked about how this big dog man, probably the mother, and a smaller dog man basically walked out of the desert and up to his tent. And he went on to talk about how the small dog man unzipped the door of his tent, crawled into his tent with him, sat
Mm.
on his legs, and licked his face. Well, when I read the report, when he submitted it, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I really need to vet this guy because that is so over the top. And if
Yeah.
that actually happened, he'll definitely be able to answer my vetting questions. So I set a time to call Mike, and the time came, that day and time came. So I called him up, and we were just breaking the ice with some small talk, and then it was time to get down to brass tacks. So then I started asking vetting questions. Well, it'd be like me asking you, what's the color of your shirt?
Yeah.
I asked him a vetting question that only someone who had that type of an experience would know the answer to. Just like me asking you what the color of your shirt is, he fired that correct answer back.
Yeah.
Bam, no
Quick.
hesitation,
Yeah.
matter of a fact. Here you go. Wow. Well, the next question is like asking him, what color is grass? What color is the sky?
Mm.
Instantly, he fired back the correct answer. That in order to know that answer, you had to have had the experience that you claim to have, i.e., been that close to a real dog man. And I'm thinking, wow, this guy is the real deal. Holy cow. So I brought him on and we recorded that episode, and you wouldn't believe how many messages came in, how many comments came in about how Mike was the biggest liar this, the biggest liar that. Vic, you should vet your guests better. And I'm laughing at these people because they have no clue what they're talking about. This guy is the real deal. They're wrong. That's a
Mm.
you problem, not a me problem.
Yeah.
But yeah, to close this, to land this plane, yeah, in certain circumstances like that, you can vet a guest, but there's so many times where you cannot vet a guest. There's no way to know for sure if they are telling you the truth. So at that point, all you can do is, if you're one of those people that just wants to make a judgment call, if you believe them or you don't, that's going to be the determining factor as to whether you bring them on your show. Or if you're like me, where you'd rather play the fool and bring someone on your show who's lying, as long as you don't know definitively that they are, then run the risk of turning someone who is telling the truth away at the door. But because of how they delivered it, like we talked about earlier,
Mm.
you mistakenly thought they were a liar. Now, let me qualify that too. I guess I should get into this. I have had people lined up to come on the show who I caught later on in a lie.
Yeah.
Well, if I catch them in one lie, they're a liar. So why should I believe they had their encounter in the first place? And then I will turn them away at the door and say, no, we're not going to have this show. We're not going to record it. I'm done with you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I will turn someone away if I catch them in one lie. But
Mm.
if I don't catch them in one lie, then I will allow them to come on the show, and I'll let the listeners determine if they think they're telling the truth or not.
Yeah. That sounds good, man. That's yeah. Definitely. Definitely words of wisdom on that one. And like like you said, like I totally 100% agree with you. It's when you get to a point, if you're basically vetting all these people, it's one, it's a lot of work. Two, it's very tiring. And three, there's going to be a lot of people slipping through the cracks because we're all flawed. And but like you said, I'm the same way. I rather just play the fool, have someone come on, tell me their experiences, and like you said, people who actually had experiences, if they are delivering it the wrong way or they're nervous or whatever, to me, it's just it just is what it is, And if it's a good story, it's a good story. But you know, it's just to me, it's just the name of the game, my friend. It's just the name of the game. But um, but other than that, man, I definitely do appreciate you and what you do and all that. And for oh gosh, I know for one, you and I prior talking earlier, people who want to start podcasting, who want to start doing this, I always let people know, like, if you do this long enough, you are going to have haters, you are going to have naysayers, you are going to have people trying to pull you down. But like you do, like I do, just take it one day at a time, keep doing what you're doing, and just keep pressing forward, and don't worry about anybody else. You know what I mean?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's a metric you can use to tell how good you're doing, how well you're doing. The more haters you have, the better you're doing. The haters don't come for you when you're not doing well. They wait
Mhm.
until you actually are doing well to come for you. So, yeah, keep that in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you, man. Yeah, we're about to. We'll close it up. Other than that, do you have anything to ask me or anything like that you want to say in closing?
I don't, other than thanks for having me on. And of course, I wish you nothing but the best of luck with your podcast and everything else you do.
I appreciate you, brother, man. You too, man. Like you said, like I said, you're like the tip of the spear when it comes to dogman encounters and stuff like that. So you just keep doing what you're doing, Vic, and bro, you're doing a hell of a job, man. So other than that, where could people find you at if they need to get a hold of you, watch your show, all that? Throw it out there, brother.
Well, if they've had a dogman encounter that they need help with, or if they want to be a guest on the show because they've had a dogman encounter, or maybe both, then it's really easy to get that started. They would just need to go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. If you do that, then I'll contact you and schedule a phone consultation with you so we can have a good conversation about what happened to you, your experience, in other words, and we'll just take it from there. We'll set a time to talk, and I'll do the best I can to help make sense of your experience and get you back on the rails. If you've had a Sasquatch sighting and would like to be a guest on one of my two Sasquatch podcasts, I've got my Bigfoot sighting and I've also got Bigfoot Eyewitness Radio. Then I guess the easiest way would be to go to my bigfootsighting.com and submit a guest request. So it's that easy. And the websites for both of the Sasquatch podcasts would be mybigfootsighting.com and then there's bigfooteyewitness.com.
Roger that, sir. I like I s- yeah, I only that I will actually have all your stuff in the show notes for anyone who wants to get a hold of Vic. Like I said, just scroll down and I'll have everything he talks about in the show notes. You plugged in and it'll just go straight to his website. So other than that, Vic, dude, I appreciate you, man. Thank you for starting off my morning good.
Huh.
For those of you guys don't know, I work night shift, so this is my morning right now. But other than that, guys, I appreciate you. Vic, don't go yet. I'm gonna close it out and then we'll chat a little bit and then I'll let you go. So other than that, guys, yeah, I just want to say thank you guys for stopping by. If you guys need to get a hold of me, you can shoot me an email, cryptidwarfare@gmail.com. That's cryptidwarfare@gmail.com. You guys had any experiences? You guys want to chit chat? You guys need any prayer? Let me know. And like I said, I will have all of Vic Cundiff's info and intel on the bottom of the show notes whenever I shoot the podcast out. So, all right, guys, have a blessed week. We'll catch you later.